It's time for this week's episode of Brandon Sports Talk, featuring in-depth interviews from those who are trending in the world of athletics. And now, here's the host of Brandon Sports Talk, Brandon Pate.
Welcome back to Brandon Sports Talk. In today's episode, I have the privilege to interview the Pomona Pitzer assistant water polo coach, Coach Elyssa Hakwins. How are you doing today?
I am doing well. How are you, Brandon?
I'm doing good. Can you talk about how you knew that you wanted to get started in coaching in college water polo?
Yes, absolutely. So at the time that I had graduated from my undergrad, I was looking for a career opportunity that would combine my passion and interest in sports, especially my love in water polo, while also incorporating the life and business skills that I had accumulated going into a professional career. And so I had first started out with age group. I first started working with high school, and that's where things took off.
What was that like, obviously, getting to play water polo in college?
Looking back on playing water polo, especially for Carthage, where I had gone, it was fun. I look back on my time there fondly, mostly because we were a team that not many people expected much out of, and that's what made those who underestimated us fun, because we had the mentality of we are going into a lot of games as an underdog, having a lot of our athletes coming from places outside of major water polo areas. And so I remember when we went to play Claremont Mud Scrubs based out of California, they were surprised by how much hustle we had and how hard we would shoot the ball, how fast we would be on our countering. And so I think because we had that hustle and heart, it made playing other teams that much more exciting for us. And a lot of coaches would admit that we were a challenge for them because they were not really expecting that.
Of course, as a collegiate athlete, what was it like getting to put on that water suit and the cap for Carthage College?
Uh, Honestly, getting to put on a cap with the Shield at Sea meant a lot when it came to representation. I was very involved as a student athlete. I also am part of a minority when it comes to water polo, being a person of color. And so some of my accomplishments that I had while at Carthage, whether it was finishing third, being all conference, being academic All-American, and a senior athlete of the year, I think those are things that truly, for me, I have a lot of pride just because of the fact that those were all things that I could do while representing the Shielded Sea. So.
Looking back on your collegiate time, what were some of your fondest memories?
I would say traveling was always a fun time for us. I think there were a lot of fun travel stories that we had, especially when it came to going to California when it was snowing outside in Wisconsin, long bus rides where we came up with a lot of random fun bus games. Our coach would, and we'd always make jokes about how our coach would do gymnastics, just trying to step over girls who had extended their legs out to try to sleep across a row of coach bus seats. And also we just had a lot of fun, spontaneous dance parties as part of our warm up on the pool deck. And so the team aspect was really something that I look back on with the utmost fondness.
What was it like being a part of the developmental team for the US Olympics?
So for the ODP program, my experience as a player was my first foray into how I connected with other people in the sport. I definitely think about the landscape of the game has changed a lot, and I think my game as a player had changed a lot with it. And yet I don't really remember the little details that I would have when it came to how I developed as a player. Those were things that I think for me just came naturally because I was very much that you give direction and I would just go out there and do it. And so I really remember more of the friends that I made, the people that I got to meet across different zones of the United States. And there's still some people that are on my ODP teams that I talk to still to this day. And we still kind of check in every now and then. And so I think about that a lot as a player. And then I think as a coach being involved, I think about how your play can be analyzed so much down to a T. And that's one of the things that I think about in terms of that experience and how also just better understanding how players take feedback, because sometimes players really like that analyzation, they like that attention to detail, and other players are kind of just like me, of just give simple direction, and that's where I do best with improvement. And so it definitely also, I think, gave me a really good sense of perspective for how to shape the way I give feedback as a coach.
Well, what was it like, obviously, getting to represent the Team USA team on the water polo side?
It was a lot of fun. It was, I think just because of the fact that, like I said, there are people that I remember going on trips with at different selection camps that I still talk to, I'm still in touch with. And I think that's a big part of just what makes the sport across the US as exciting as it is from the growth perspective, because now when I go back to those same selection camps as a college coach, I see so many more kids from so many more states and so many more regions represented. And so I think that's something where I take a lot of pride for what I was able to get out of it, especially when it came to being seen by coaches, being able to have the USA now, just how much has expanded and grown as a sport throughout the United States.
Of course, after your playing career on the Team USA team, what was it like getting into coaching water polo?
So coaching on starting with the club side, kind of like I touched on before, it was a privilege, because with the first club that I coached with, Lions, they were the teams I started with when I had started playing within high school. And so it was really a privilege to come back to be able to work with the future of water polo from the Chicagoland area, as well as being able to see so many of those players going on to play at the college level. I have an immense amount of pride on that front for those student athletes that had gotten to that point. Meanwhile, when I made the move to coach at another club for Windy City, I found a good group of people on the staff that I'm still in touch with after having moved to California. And I'm still in touch with a lot of players and their parents. It was actually funny. I was at a tournament recruiting, and there was one athlete who had approached me and had asked if I remembered who she was. And it was a really sweet moment, just because it had shown just how much of an impact that you can make as a coach for athletes. And she was really excited to tell me about how she is looking at college now and how she's thinking about what are some of the places that might be a good fit for her. And so I think just those experiences were really, I think were a privilege, just to be able to kind of first get into whether or not I could see this as a career for myself.
What was that experience like, going to Windy City and getting to coach for that club?
I would say it was fun, but it was also different too. I think one of the things that about the club scene, especially when it comes to Chicagoland area, that can be kind of difficult sometimes, is just there's a lot of different styles of play. There's a lot of different ways that coaches go about their philosophies for their teams and their clubs. And so I think that was just the biggest thing that I kind of take now as I still continue to coach club for our Southern California area, is just the difference in philosophy, and just being able to kind of look at my own coaching critically, and just be able to ask myself of what or how am I going about practices and games in the way that best represents the club that I'm at. And I think that was the biggest thing that I learned while at Windy City, because it was a different expectation in comparison to when I was with Lions. And I think now that's especially something that I look at in terms of how to best be present with the club that I'm currently at when I'm not here at Pomona Pitzer.
As a coach on the club level, what has that been like? Obviously, getting that experience at Windy City, where water polo hasn't been very popular, versus coming to the California area where water polo is more heavily popular.
I would say, honestly, the biggest thing in terms of my perspective that's changed is just the amount of competition that is offered in Southern California. And I think, and it's not to in any way diss the water polo scene in other areas, but it is a reality, is that the club team that I'm currently coaching with when I'm not Pomona Pitzer Foothill Club, there's a lot of tournaments that we schedule, because there are a lot of teams to be able to play at any given time. And I think that's just been the biggest perspective I have, is just regardless of the level that players are at, I think the biggest advantage is just how many games, how many tournaments a team can get, or a player could possibly be competing in. And I think that's something where that's been the biggest thing adjustment wise that I've had to make, is just how I plan, like how those tournaments are planned. What are things that we need to to fulfill our philosophies. The biggest one definitely including professionalism and respect, because we are representing a club and we are representing a program that has been a fixture within the area for a few decades now. And so I think a lot of things that I learned from Windy City that I've been able to carry over here, that's definitely been the biggest aspect of it, is just really understanding those components. But honestly, the athletes are all the same though, in the way of they are here because they want to get better. They're here because they really like playing. They want to improve on their skill. This past winter with our high school boys, we've had a couple of boys from the same high school, and a lot of their parents are really excited for now our upcoming spring and summer sessions, just because if the group continues to come to these practices and continue to play and work together, it will make the fall that much better for them, because it's the extra time that they have spent just working on getting better individually, being better as a team, having a lot of great experience competition wise. And so I would definitely say that is, I think, by far the biggest thing. And I think even with the biggest thing that's been consistent is just the want to be there, the motivation to do so. And I think just the fact that there are so many kids from the same high school that also see that it's something that has value. And for us, one of our biggest principles is trying to send kids to play water polo in college. And I think just the fact that we have a good number that have in our current high school class of 2023 is good, but we definitely want to see it having just that one more player in 2024, maybe adding on, at that case, 2 more in 2025, just seeing that continuously going and going, because we have sent a lot to some good programs in the past, but we want to continue to keep that going towards our future.
As a coach, what has it been like, obviously making that jump from coaching on the club level to now coaching college water polo?
I would definitely say the biggest, one of the biggest changes besides just the level of play, because with club, you can range from being with age group or elementary, middle school age kids and high school kids, whereas now with college, you're coaching young adults. You're coaching 18 to 22-year-olds. And so there's definitely things that, in terms of when you give feedback and instruction, just remembering to be mindful of the fact that you are talking with young adults, really. And whereas with age group kids, sometimes you can kind of talk to the way a teacher would to students, because you're trying to have that educational component, whereas if you do that with college kids, sometimes it can be perceived as you're talking down to them, and you don't, and they want to feel respected, and they want to feel that they are treated as such. And so that's definitely the biggest thing, is just how to give feedback across the board. But I think also too, just there is a lot in the way our scheduling is. We face a lot of tough competition, but it's not as jam-packed as with club tournaments. You could have many games within 2 days, whereas the college level, it's only a few games at a time within a couple of days, but they can be some really tough games. This past weekend, we were at a tournament hosted by UC Irvine, and in those 3 days, we played Stanford, we played the University of Michigan, we played UC San Diego, and we played Indiana University. And those were 4 tough teams in the span of 3 days. Whereas there's other tournaments where we will play some of those teams in just 2 days, or we'll play 5 games in 2 days. Last year, when we went to travel on the East Coast, we had issues with flight delays that in just a quick turnaround time, we had to play a Marist the next morning, or we had to play 2 other teams next morning, or even just this past year when we went on that same trip East Coast, we had to make the drive from Providence to Harvard, and we were then expected to play a Saturday 8 a.m. Eastern Standard Time game against St. Francis University. And that was something where, for our athletes, we had to teach them, it's one thing to play at 8 a.m. in California, but it's another to play at 8 a.m. In Boston, and you're from California, or you just traveled there about 2 or 3 days ago. And so there's definitely those things. I'd say those smaller aspects of, when it comes to college side, there's more travel that can happen. There's more in the way of you're adjusting, especially just as you are reaching adulthood. And I think also too, the biggest thing that remains the same is the I would say the opportunity to forge really strong relationships with your teammates, and being able to connect really well with your coaches. I think that's something that's really been consistent just across the board.
What was it like, obviously, getting to become the college assistant coach for Pomona?
So to be here at Pomona Pitzer, it's been a fantastic opportunity so far. I never would have imagined this is where I get to be at in terms of starting my college coaching career, and I'm incredibly grateful for what we have accomplished so far, especially considering the adversity that our teams have faced with the COVID-19 pandemic. And so it's been really an incredible opportunity. And I think it's one where I definitely feel like there's a lot that I've learned just about myself and what I want to get out of this career as a coach, and just how, when it comes to accomplishing goals, just what are ways that I can actually go about them in a more tangible space.
As a coach, and obviously as you were talking about going across the county and across the country, what has that been like, obviously going from California to the East Coast and playing those teams in the East Coast on a different time zone?
Yeah, it's fun, but it's also, or I say a lot of things are fun, just because I definitely am someone who does not try and shy away from challenges or shy away from new opportunities. But I would definitely say it was, I think, especially a challenge because a majority of our roster is from California. So there are not very many who have experience playing in indoor pools. They are not as familiar with what officiating looks like on the East Coast. Our men's team definitely learned a very valuable lesson in home court advantage when it comes to officiating on the East Coast versus out here on the West Coast, because home court officiating is not necessarily a thing out here, and yet it can be for certain pools. And it's one of the things where just having that awareness for, oh, this might be one of those pools where there are going to be some calls where we have to play really clean water polo. We have to really find ourselves in positions where we can't really commit too many errors defensively, because those can be things that, just because of who we're playing against at their home pool, it can be a factor. And so I would definitely say that was definitely a big thing. And especially with nationals for the women's team, should we qualify this year, knock on wood, should we qualify this year, that means we are going to be playing at an indoor facility. And so I think just having that added experience is going to be something that is a really great thing for our team just to have in the sense of preparation. But it's also good, just I think, to have our student athletes travel for the sake of, if being a student athlete can teach you great value in time management, then it should definitely include how to manage your time when you are traveling. Or if you know that you're going to be traveling an extra day early, being prepared when it comes to your assignments or with projects or with long-term research. And I think that's something that is really a great reason for why you should have an incorporated travel schedule that might not necessarily be thought of right away, but it's definitely one of those things in the long term that can really be impactful.
As a college coach, and even for your players, what is that like, obviously getting to play in the outdoor facility where the pool is obviously outdoors versus going like to Stanford and playing in indoor pool?
I would definitely say they both have their benefits, and they both have their drawbacks. I mean, it's definitely nice to be able to be at an outdoor pool in January, but I would also say, when it comes to the wind chill that can be out here, the pool can be as warm as you'd like for it to be, but getting out is still an absolute chill to the bone. And so there is definitely drawbacks with that. Whereas indoor pools, you don't have to worry too much about the elements, but the pool will always be at a very cold temperature that it's best to keep moving. It's best to stay active. And so I think just from the elemental perspective and the environment perspective, those are always the biggest things. Is just, when you're outdoors, you can expect the pool to be a little bit warmer because you'll be cold right when you get out. But when it comes to indoor pools, the deck will feel nice, but the pool will be ice cold. And then when it comes to, I would say, just the overall feel for certain pools, I've definitely been to a fair share of ones that are Olympic-sized facilities. I've been to facilities that are even greater than that. I've been to facilities that have wraparound stadium seating that makes you feel like you're at a pro game. I've been to some that have very limited seating or have seating that is probably older than me. And so I think that's also been something where, when it comes to those factors, pool quality, I mean, for me, I might be a snob, or I might have my biases, but if there's if there's a game to be played in at any given pool, then I think the challenge in of itself is always going to be there. I would say the biggest thing that we look out with in Southern California are very few opportunities to play in a shallow, deep setting. I will say that is a very nice thing to have, whereas some indoor pools, I might not be able to say the same.
What was it like, obviously, as a assistant coach, being a part of that 2021 team where the men's and the women's went to the national championship?
Yes, I would say both 2021 and 2022 were rewarding because it was coming out of a remote COVID year. And it was coming out of a year, and especially the women's team, where they had part of their season taken away because of the initial COVID-19 shutdown. And you could see the effort and the energy the teams had all year long. You could see how badly they wanted to be be there, have a season, compete, because there was already so much that was beyond their control for why they could not be able to complete a 4-year career the way that we traditionally expect athletes to do so. And so the fact that they were able to come back and really be able to win it all, both on the men's and the women's side, I think that's the biggest thing that we look back on. Is it was definitely a year where there was very little taken for granted. And even if there were, then it was not very long, because there was always that reminder of the fact that we could still be inside of our homes and not playing.
Of course, as a coach, what was that feeling like, getting to hoist up the trophy and then hand it off to your players, knowing that all of their hard work's paid off?
Oh, well, it's funny. I would say I did that with the men's team. The women's team, that was something that we as a staff were very much about. It was the women's trophy. It was the one that they had full reign on. If we get to take a picture, we're going to be the last people to do it, because at the end of the day, I think it's really just about the players. The players are the ones who put all the work in. They're the ones who put all the effort in. And we're the ones that they trust with us to just prepare and be ready for those games. And I think it's something where just that entire year's hard work and effort, regardless of who is holding it, just the weight of knowing that everyone had a part to play within it is truly, I think, that's just what makes it the greatest feeling.
How's it been like, obviously, becoming the assistant coach for the men's and women's, along with being the recruitment coordinator?
It's fun. And I'd say the biggest part of that is because of the fact that I am definitely a people person, is what I pride myself on being. I think one of the things that's been really rewarding too is part of when it comes to recruiting is plays into one of my strengths as a planner. And so when it comes to having prospective student athletes visiting on campus, it's a lot of fun to be able to kind of plan what to expect within that day, whether it's being able to see our games, touring our campuses, our athletic facilities as well, or if it's an overnight visit, being able to have our student athletes really bring out the best of what our colleges and what our program have to offer. And so I think it's definitely one of my favorite aspects, in addition to just getting to know student athletes and their families and their goals and what they want to look for in a college experience. Because for us, we definitely pride ourselves in trying to offer the best of both worlds as a student and as an athlete. And so I think just being able to have not only student athletes that can really bring out that energy, but something that's felt not just by the student, but also by their family too, because that's one of the other things we really pride ourselves on, is having a greater family level of support for everyone on our roster, whether you are an All-American or whether you get a couple minutes in at a time. And so I think that's been one of the greatest things about recruiting. And for us, when it comes to some of the big wins and accomplishments that we've had, it's actually kind of nice sometimes when some of our athletes introduce me as the one who told them, hey, have you ever heard of Pomona Pitzer? You should check us out. And I think about that, and I think just about how, wow, like this is a positive impact for someone and just their future.
How's it been able to balance, obviously, being an assistant coach and also the director of Deep Dives Seas water polo?
Yeah. It's a passion project of mine, and as well as 3 other college coaches that are at the level. And we picked the name Deep Dish especially just because of the fact that we are really proud to have played water polo in the Chicagoland area. And so I think the biggest thing is definitely planning. I am very fortunate to have again 2 co-coaches who are just as passionate about this as I am, that are really big on communication, and we've had support for facility wise, and just being able to have consistent turnout of athletes who see a need for this, coaches who want to learn new fun drills or want to learn different bits of feedback to help their players improve, I think is Really, honestly, I would say the best part of that, I think being able to balance it is, like I said, a lot of it just comes down to planning. I pride myself on my planning skills, but also just the collaborative effort with other people is, I think, where it also is very important and very vital. And I think just to see various athletes that have been a part of our camps that then have gone on to commit to really great colleges, I think it's awesome because there's definitely that added component of those whom have stayed in touch with us, asking us for advice and feedback, or asking some of our college students who are there to act as like in water instruction. It's been really awesome to see just in the short time that we've been together, just how much of that has been pulled off and still be able to bounce out with everything else. It's not always ideal, but the passion and the mission are what make it worthwhile.
What does a typical water match polo look like for you?
Um, so in terms of preparing for game day, at home we really pride ourselves on having a great game day atmosphere, and so we are sticklers for attention to detail, and that ranges from whether our setup is complete or not, what setup we need to have done. Sometimes we'll have easy ups in our home and away benches set up and assembled the day before, making sure that our shot clocks are prepared and are running and are operating smoothly. We whenever we host our home tournament, we make sure that we have our hospitality table taken care of. We have workers for all of our games, and so that's a big part of just making that experience really insightful and wonderful. And as a team, we are making sure whether or not we need to review scouting film, having our team meetings, making sure that there's enough time for our athletes to have dryland warm up, in the water warm up. And when that happens, what kind of music do we have? Do we have a playlist of songs that the team wants to have heard for our home games? And is our announcer ready? Do they have the rosters that they need for announcing in our presentation section or throughout the game? And so there's a lot of detail that goes into when it comes to preparing for game day, just from the perspective of home court, but also for our team. And it's a lot of fun when it all comes together, just because you can see that the fans really get into it when there is a lot of time that is spent just making sure that the fan experience overall is exactly what we want it to be.
Have you been able to use what you've learned as a collegiate athlete and also with the U.S. developmental team into where you are now as a college coach?
I have found a lot of my philosophies are what I apply, and whether it's my time, and I still continue to play as well with our Masters Water Polo League, and I think that's something where I think it's been the biggest thing is just philosophies and also being able to see it in action. So there have been practices where I've gotten in with the team. There have been other practices where I think more so about the philosophy. I think about we've had meetings about what kind of culture do we want to have on the team. We think we've had practices, or we've had even in our last scouting session before we had played Indiana at the Barbara Calvis Invitational, we had talked a lot about what kind of team we want to be and how one of our goals was to win one game at that tournament, because that is a very competitive tournament for us to be in. And it's one where we had opponents that we were definitely well within reach. We were sticking with them. And so for us, it's really, or just what I see in terms of how I apply, is a lot of just the mindset of how to go about things as a player and whether it is knowing your opponents or it's walking onto the full deck and having the utmost confidence in what we're about and who we are, as well as just like what kind of team we want to be when it comes to just how we accomplish our goals.
For my listeners that don't know how you play water polo, how would you describe how you play it?
So the game can definitely be described a number of ways. I would say, for those who are familiar with handball, there's definitely the most parallels with that sport. If you're not, you can think of it as a soccer field in a pool, a basketball shot clock and basketball positions plus a goalie, and the fouls that are comparable to hockey. So if you like hockey, you will like the fouls that can go on in water polo. And all of that is split between 4 in college level 8-minute periods. High school is 7, club is usually around 7 or 6, but it's split between 4 periods. And the object of the game is to score a goal using the ball, but only with one hand. Goalkeepers can use 2. But of course, you're also battling against other opponents in the water that might be physically strong. So an egg beater kick is usually the best way to go when setting up in front court offense. But also being a fast counterattacker does not hurt either.
Can you talk about, of course, the culture that you've built for the program?
I mean, when I got here, there was definitely a culture that was established prior to me being here. But I think since then, one of the biggest things that I have emphasized a lot on that has been well received is just what kind of values we have. And I think the big part of that is respect. There's a lot of respect that the athletes have for one another, regardless of how many athletes get playing time within certain games. There's definitely a great amount of respect. And I think in terms of when I have recruited prospective athletes to come onto the team, that's the first thing that they recognize is just how much respect and how much positive energy everyone has for one another. And that's something that the team has consistently worked towards having be a goal for the sake of it's something that they never want to feel like once they have it, there's no need to continue to work on it. There's always room for improvement. And I think it's the other thing too that I think about with my team was hustle and heart. And that's one of the biggest things that I'm trying to emphasize for this season is to hustle at every opportunity, because when we're in real time, when we're playing in a real time game or we have a really highly competitive game, hustle is more often than not going to be a big factor in whether or not we win the quarter, win the possession, or we even win the game.
Who are some of the teams you face each week in your conference?
So the teams in our conference consist of the California Institute of Technology, Chapman University, California Lutheran University, Claremont Mudd-Scripps Colleges, University of Laverne, Occidental College, the University of Redlands, and Whittier College. And they are all located regionally within Southern California, within the greater LA area. The furthest being Cal Lutheran, based out of Thousand Oaks and Ventura County, and then Chapman is down south in Orange County.
What is that like, obviously, getting to face those teams in your conference that are in the California area versus traveling to, like, Stanford?
Yeah. I would say the nicest thing about our conference is because they sponsor all of our sports, it's a lot easier, I think, for the general student body to kind of follow along with those teams. I mean, obviously, we want to take a lot of pride with when we do get to travel to play Stanford, or we travel to play Brown and Harvard, or we get the opportunity to play a Big Ten school or a Pac-12 school. But I think there really is something different when it's a conference team that a lot of other people know about. I think about football has a long-standing rivalry with Claremont Mudd-Scripps or CMS. And so whenever we host games, football, especially during women's season, football really makes an effort to come out and watch those games, because that is a very intense rivalry between our programs. I think about how, and in turn too, whenever there are games going on conference-wise, we've gone back and forth a few times with Whittier. And so when other teams host Whittier, our team is usually one of the many that are out there ready to support, because there is that rivalry that's kind of built in there. And so I think when it comes to, and the other thing too is especially the travel aspect with conference, because water polo is so niche as a sport, the majority of our other conferences have to travel either long bus rides or by plane. And so the fact that for us, we are fortunate that we travel by bus for all of our teams, I think is something that sometimes I think we take a little bit for granted, myself included, but I definitely remind myself that going for a 1-hour bus ride is much nicer than a 6-hour one. So I will definitely say that's another thing that's really just, I think, different about that experience too, is just the opportunity to have such local travel and still being able to get home in a reasonable time.
What is that like, obviously, getting to play those competitive non-conference teams like Princeton, Yale, Harvard, Brown, and even Stanford, along with UCLA?
Yeah. Oh gosh, it is a really great challenge, because I think for us, just the way that the culture of our schools are for how academic they are, or we pride ourselves on trying to have a team that best reflects that in the way of, if you're challenged academically, you should also be challenged athletically. And I think for the teams and so we schedule a very hard non-conference slate. And I definitely would say that it's something that our teams have definitely improved a lot just because of that. And I think there's just a lot of really great challenges that have come out of that. And for some of our alumni, they've recalled how they've been in situations where they've played against USC as a smaller roster team, and how that's prepared them for when they are going against major companies and they might be working for a minor company. And so it's something where there's just so much of reflection of life skills that I think just being able to be challenged, being able to see how, even what are things about some of those high level opponents, what are things about their game that you can take and incorporate into your own game. And I think that's something that a lot of our athletes also see and are things that they want to try and apply and implement too. And so I would definitely say having that opportunity has really meant a tremendous amount. And I think it's also allowed the teams to really realize and acknowledge that we are right in that same mix. And we've had some really incredible wins. We just recently had beaten Indiana University, who was ranked in the top 15 at 11th in the country for Division I. And so I think the fact that our women's team had beaten them in a 3-goal game, I think that's something that they really take a lot of pride with, just because of the fact that it's not necessarily expected of that in other sports. And so the fact that we're a team that's out here and accomplishing those things is something that they take a lot of pride with, and is something that I think collectively we're all hoping that we can continue to have that when it comes to some of the other opponents that we're facing, and really just show that it's not a fluke. We are a tough, highly competitive team that is looking to play to win and refuse to lose.
What does the recruitment process look like for those prospective student athletes looking to play water polo?
Oh, I would say it's definitely different, because we do have an academic component. Because you could be the best player in the world and still not have the grades for our institutions. And that's a big factor, is we are very competitive. And overall fit is a really big factor. We pride ourselves on having that level of competition, not only athletically, but also academically. And with that in mind, we look for players that they not only have the academics that like best reflect what our schools look for, they also have really great extracurriculars that reflect what the schools look for. And then when it comes to the water polo component, where are they training at? Whom are they competing with? Because that's a big part of it too, is if they're competing with athletes who are recruited at some of these major name schools, then that shows us that when we're trying to accomplish here as a competitive program in our own right, they can hang with those girls. They can play with those girls. And that's something that we're thinking about too, is like, now that we have beaten the 11th ranked team in the nation, how are we going to top that? What are we going to do? And a big part of that, I think, is definitely going to be that it's now attracting players that have that same kind of competitive energy, and they want to be a part of that. Our own incoming freshman class for the women's team, they had all reached out and texted me saying about how they want to be a part of that team next year, and how next year they want to be a part of that team that beats the top 15 team. And so it's something where I think just when it comes to the recruitment process, the fit is a big factor, because there really isn't too much to be had coasting. And so if you know that's what you're getting yourself into, and you know that you have goals that you want to accomplish, and that includes being able to play at a high level, that includes being able to go into pre-med or pre-law without feeling as if you have to forego that for the sake of competing at a high level, then we're definitely the type of school that you are looking for. And that's where a lot of our alumni, they are very successful in their respective industries, because they've had the opportunity to balance that out. They've had the opportunity to study abroad. They have the opportunity to do so many things, not just as a athlete, but as a student. And I think we really are trying to bring that back and put that athlete in student athlete, and put that student in student athlete.
Of course, as an assistant coach, what are some of the things that you look at in those prospective student athletes when out on the road recruiting them?
I think a big part of it is the tangibles of what are their fundamental skills? How would I assess their ball handling, their skill, their speed, their overall fundamentals when it comes to the front court offense and front court defense. Those are definitely some of the tangibles, but I think the intangibles, I think just include just what kind of player they are when it comes to the game. One of our best players right now, we kind of joke that she is this alpha player because she can do all these amazing things, but it's very true in that she might not score all of the goals in the game, but she reads the water very well. And that's one of the things that we look for intangibly. Like, how do you read the water? How do you read the pass? How do you, when you shoot, do you shoot hard? Or do you read the pool well enough to know that there's someone else who's open that they can score off of that pass that you make? Or how do you create scoring opportunities for your team, whether it's with counterattacks or power plays? And there's just a lot of those little things of just also awareness and IQ are so important when it comes to our sport. And so a lot of those intangibles are things that we also look for too. And those are things where I think when it comes to right now, this recruiting trail, one of our athletes that's coming in, she hasn't had a lot of experience with playing, but she has a lot of raw talent. She is a very strong player and she has great awareness. She has really great size and she is very competitive when it comes to any position that she plays in. And I think, and moreover, she just wants it. She wants to compete. She wants to play. She wants to win. She wants to kick some serious butt. And I think that's something that you just can't measure those things. But when you see them, you have to go after them. You have to recruit them.
Of course, what does that official visit look like when those prospective student athletes come on in to visit the campus?
So we pride ourselves on allowing prospective student athletes to see what we have to offer. And so we go in depth with opportunities to see our campus, taking official tours, seeing our facilities. So not just our pool, but also our athletic performance center, our athletic training facilities. And if it's an overnight visit, our residence halls, being able to see what campus life is like as a student, being able to sit in on classes, and see how our professors interact with students, as well as our dining hall options. One of the things that's really great about our campuses is because they're close with other Claremont colleges, we can have cross-campus dining. And so you really get a good feel for just different personalities across the Claremont colleges. And so being able to see just everything that we have to offer is always our big goal. And for some, it's something that they are immediately drawn into right away. For others, it's something where they continue to really be intrigued by us and they want to continue to learn more.
As an assistant coach, was it like seeing those players as freshmen put on that cap for the first time and represent the university versus as a senior putting it on for the last
time? So this one is tough because my first class since being here will be doing that this season. But so I will definitely have to get back to you. But the biggest thing I definitely commend them for is the adversity that's come their way. Especially as I've mentioned previously, just when it comes to COVID and how they've handled that and how they have taken that on. I think a lot about our graduate students from last year and just how being able to put on their game caps for one more time before playing in national finals. I think that's something that I think that was it was very full circle of just everything that had culminated, had gotten to that point. And so I think this year it'll be very bittersweet. So to be determined on that one.
Of course, what is it like obviously getting to see those players represent the university and then go on to the national level?
So the international level is actually really exciting to see for some of our student athletes to be able to pursue. I just found out one of our most recent alumni, she has her own sticker of it's her face with her pro team and striking an athletic pose. And I think it's just cool to see, and she's adding that to her life resume and being able to see that there are fans that are cheering for her and that she is in her own way kind of a bit of a celebrity when it comes to just internationally. And so it's a lot of fun to see that it's someone who came from our program and they are attracted and they are adding on just a really great experience overall.
What are some of your future plans for the water polo program moving forward?
So I think while I'm here, I think one of the biggest things is just continuing to see that our team is ranked within the top 25 rankings for across all three across all three NC2A divisions. And I think just being able to continue to have a really great success rate when it comes to graduating and finding jobs after college. I think those are things I see for the program. For myself, I definitely want to continue to expand on my own experiences as a coach, being able to see what other programs have to offer when it comes to the water polo front, and really just continuing to kind of stay involved with the sport.
What advice would you give those high school athletes that are looking to become college water polo players?
There is a place for you. It pains me to see when athletes decide not to play in college just because their first choice did not work out. There's a place for every athlete. There are a lot of great academic institutions that want water polo players. And so make sure you do your homework to kind of help decide where that great fit is going to be. Because where you find places that you fall in love with, they might not have even been places that you thought of. And so just always remembering that there is a place for you.
What advice would you give those college freshmen entering their first year of collegiate water polo?
It is not an easy adjustment, but stick it out for your first year. Because when you do that, you get a really great sense of what are the things that you want to get out of your college experience. I have had some student athletes who have quit right before season started, and I think that is something where it's kind of a shame to see that because of the fact that if you had worked so hard to play as a college athlete, I think the best thing you do for yourself is commit to that first year. Commit to that first year, see how you adjust with transitioning into the game, see how you transition as a student. And if at the end of the season, you feel as if you being a college athlete is not for you, you can at least say that you know that fully, as opposed to only having gone part of the way through. And so I think that adjustment period, it's not easy for everyone. And if it seems like some of your teammates are being better acclimated, it's definitely because of other facets that you might not necessarily think. So there's challenges for everybody, no matter what, but definitely stick it out for your first year. And when going your sophomore year, you can make the decision for yourself of whether or not it's something you want to continue to stick with.
What advice would you give those college athletes that are looking to go on and represent a national team like Team USA or Canada and one day make it to the Olympics?
I would say when it comes to having the opportunity to definitely go for it, because I think especially when it comes to our national teams for the United States, especially I think especially when it comes to the women's side, it's a really great program to be a part of, and to definitely pursue that as full to the fullest. Because if anything else, at the end of the day, you have accumulated so many tremendous skills. You have grown so much as an individual, and you've also found yourself surrounded by a really great group of individuals that you can consider to be just lifelong affiliates. I'd also say to be able to represent the USA Shield is definitely a privilege to get to that point. And so I'd also say that for those pursuing that, it's not easy. If you make it as far as being able to represent on a very on a national team that is generally 13, 14, 15 people, that's a huge accomplishment. And to just take in everything that you learn, take in the sights, take in the sounds, just take in everything, because it is an incredible part of any given experience that should be taken advantage of to the fullest.
What advice would you give those future college coaches looking to get started in coaching in the industry of water polo?
I would say do your homework, network with as many coaches as you can. A big component of that part of the process is networking. It might not mean that those coaches that you know may necessarily hire you, but they will know of coaches who are looking for assistance and will definitely encourage you to apply for those positions, because if there is a program for any given student athlete, there is definitely a program for any given coach. And it comes down to just finding that place that's right for you. And I think the further along you get into it, there is an opportunity then to really go after the jobs that you want. And a big part of that is contingent with just the experiences that you're willing to accumulate just from the get-go. One of our coaches on staff, they have been able to work with our national teams for 3 Olympic cycles, but that did not just happen overnight. It was something that required a great amount of work of experience, and sometimes taking on positions that necessarily didn't have a lot of pay with them. And so I think just having that willingness to learn as much as you can is a huge component too. And so definitely doing your homework, networking with as many coaches as you can, because at the end of the day, those can be coaches that you can reach out to just about other opportunities that may come your way. And I think that's just a really big part of it, to say the least.
Where can our listeners find you at on social media?
So you can follow our water polo programs with @SageHensPolo. That is our handle for Twitter, for Instagram. Our Facebook is @SageHensAthletics. If you want to follow me personally, you can find me on Twitter @EBHawk4 and on Instagram @Elyssa, ELYSSA.MB.
Thank you again, Coach Elyssa Hakwins, for your interview, and best of luck in your future at Pamlico Prez as the assistant water polo coach.
Thank you so much for having me on. It was an absolute delight to be here. And thank you again for the best wishes for our team.
Thank you. You can find Brandon Sports Talk on Facebook at Brandon Sports Talk, Instagram at Brandon Sports Talk, Twitter at Talk_Brandon, and you can find me on YouTube at Brandon Sports Talk. Don't forget to like, comment, and subscribe. Thank you again, Coach Elyssa, for your interview, and best of luck in your future.
Thank you so much, Brandon. This is awesome.
You've been watching Brandon Sports Talk. Please feel free to like, share, and subscribe to Brandon Sports Talk on social media and on YouTube.